Good morning again, everybody. So the question I have for you today is, have you used the Lord's word against the Lord? Let me put it another way. Have you ever used the Lord's word against others? This is something that we do struggle with in life, using the Lord's word in ways that are serving ourselves, ways that are seeking power or somehow manipulating or seeking advantage or gain over somebody else. Here's an example. Someone comes to you and they have an issue with your character, or they're trying to share with you something that has hurt them, that you've done, and in defending yourself, you say, well, you take me as I am. Right? The Lord loves me the way I am. The Lord loves me anyway. Within that, there is an excuse, right? There's an excuse that I don't have to listen, that I don't have to hear what you're saying because I am still loved by the Lord. And there's a truth in that. Does the Lord love you right now? Absolutely. Does He love you with all your faults? Absolutely. Does the Lord want you to stay the way you are? No. So there is a truth that is half true, but there is more to it. Yes, it is true that the Lord loves you, and He wants more for you. He wants to take you further along the journey, along the path to heaven, which requires change. So that's one way in which we might use the Lord's word or truths from the Lord's word to defend ourselves. Have you ever used the Lord's word to judge other people, and specifically to judge yourself better than another? Think about a person of a different faith. Have you ever used your understanding of your faith to look down and say, well, they're not of my faith. They're of a lesser faith. They don't know what I know. In that desire to lift ourselves up, we push others down. We're using our faith and the things that we have from the Lord to make ourselves feel better, to make ourselves feel superior. And that's not what the Lord teaches in His Word. The Lord teaches to not go to the head of the table, but the foot of the table, to serve and not strive to be the master. And so we do use the Lord's Word against the Lord. We do use the Lord's Word for selfish reasons. That's a part of our journey. So are we damned? No. It just means welcome. Welcome to the journey that we're all on. The journey of trying to find out where are our weaknesses and moving with the Lord towards something that is better. So this is the journey that we're all on, trying to recognize where we are going wrong. And in this example, where we're using the Lord's word against other people. The wonderful thing is the Lord knows our state. He knows that we make these mistakes. He knows where we're at. And so He teaches us and He leads us out of these states. And He gives us examples and teachings. And today is a healing miracle that speaks about this exact issue of using the Lord's word for selfish reasons. Taking what is true and using it for self. We might think that it's just about making something a half-truth. But as soon as we take something that is the Lord's and use it in a selfish way, the truth becomes a falsity. And so that's where falsity and evil come from. They don't come from the Lord, they come from us. When we use the true things that He has given, but in a way that serves our selfish loves. That is where truth or falsity and evil come from. So let's look at our journey with the Lord. Why are you here today? Why are you attending online? The Lord has brought you here. There is a desire within you to come to the Lord. There is a desire within you to connect, to build stronger relationships, to go deeper in our relationship with the Lord. That comes from the Lord flowing into each one of our souls moment by moment. His life is within each one of us. That's why we're alive today, because the Lord is flowing into us. So with that life comes His love, and with that love, a desire to connect, a desire to grow, a desire to deepen our connection and our relationships with each other and with the Lord. But we also bring into our journey all the hurtful things, all the selfish ways, all the worldly attitudes and materialistic thinking that we have. That's also part of the journey. So we have this inner love and life from the Lord, desire to connect, but we also have our tendencies for selfishness and to hurt and gain and control and that sort of thing. And so we have this clash within us of these two loves. In the middle are all the things that we learn. Part of the desire to connect and to know the Lord is a desire to learn the truth, to learn from Him what He teaches. And so part of our learning, even from kids, right? We love to learn and curious, and we ask questions. That all comes from this desire that the Lord gives us. But as we grow older, that search for knowledge turns to His Word and to heavenly life and spiritual life. And so we collect within our minds, within our memory, all sorts of ideas from the Lord's Word. Now remember, we've got on the one side a love that comes from the Lord, a desire to connect, a desire to deepen our relationships. And on the other side, we've got our selfish tendencies, our worldly perspectives. And in the middle, we have the storehouse of knowledge. What our selfish desires do, our external self, it looks to anything to use it for itself. So our selfishness looks to the things that the Lord teaches in His Word, and we look for ways in which we can use that for our own benefit. And so that's where these truths are then twisted and distorted and start to decay when, from a selfish place, we're trying to use what the Lord has given to lift ourselves up above others, to think ourselves better, and to control things in our lives. In this spiritual back and forth, the spiritual clash in our minds between what is good internally and what is selfish externally, and in the decaying truths as they become falsities in selfish ways, is the idea of leprosy. If we think of leprosy as that the disease of the skin, the disease of the outermost part of our bodies, the outer part of our bodies is the selfish aspect. And those truths that we have start to get diseased and start to decay as we turn to use them in selfish ways. And so when the Lord speaks about natural leprosy or physical leprosy, it applies to each one of us in a spiritual way in our lives when those truths that we have are decaying into falsities as we use them in selfish ways. So let's read that story again. We read it to the children, but we read it again from Matthew 8. So when Jesus had come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And behold, a leper came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Then Jesus put out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing, be cleansed. Immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, See that you tell no one, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them. So every story in the Lord's Word has a moral teaching, but it's more than that. It also has a spiritual teaching as part of it. And so in the story about leprosy, the Lord is healing a physical man, but the Lord now, with each one of us, is trying to heal our spiritual man, our spiritual self. So we read in Secrets of Heaven, book by Emanuel Swedenborg, about touch. The story centers around the man being touched by the Lord. So what does this touching mean? We read that touching denotes communication, transfer, and reception. Okay, the communication of touch is communication, transfer, and reception is because the interior things of a person put themselves forth by means of external things. So in other words, we all have loves within us, and we express that through the external things and through touch. Right? If we love somebody and we care for them, we touch them in gentle ways. We hug them, or we touch them on the cheek, or we pat them on the back to give them some support. Right? We also can express anger and frustration with somebody in a very different way of touching them. Right? What would that look like? What does touching from anger feel like? It's hard, right? It's a grip on you rather than a touch. So we can see within that touch is a communication of what is from inside of us. So we read further. And in this way, we communicate and transfer ourselves to another. And insofar as the will of the other is in agreement and makes one, they are received. Okay, so in this little passage, there is a whole lot of information about how the Lord communicates with us, how we communicate with each other. Now, we know from our own communications that communication is difficult. Communication doesn't always work out the way we plan. We might say something, but in the process of communicating, the other person hears it differently. They get the wrong end of the stick. They interpret it a different way, and we get misunderstandings. Right? So we know that communication requires the message, it requires a clean transfer of information, and it needs to be received well. This is not just true in our everyday relationships with each other, but it's true for the Lord too, in our communication or His communication with us. So I want to look at those three things of communication, of how the Lord touches us. Right? The Lord is reaching out to each one of us and wants to touch and heal us of those selfish things, of the mistakes we make in using the Lord's word to feel better, to feel more important, to use it against others. He wants to heal us from that. So here are three things to think about as we move forward with the Lord. So first we need the message, right? What is it that the Lord is trying to communicate? We have His word. That is the source of the Lord's communication. That's His message to us. Whether we hear it in sermons or whether we read it for ourselves, whether we're reading the Old Testament, the New Testament, or whether we're reading the teachings for the new church, all of those have within it a message from the Lord. So the Lord's message is constant, and it's available to us anytime, anywhere, on our phone, on a computer, in a book. It's available to us. The message is there. It is given. The Lord is reaching out. But the error comes in, or the difficult part comes in with the transfer. Are we open to hearing the Lord? Are we prepared to have that message come our way? And that's where the difficulty arises within our lives. And there's two very different ways of approaching the Lord's Word. We can approach the Lord, again, from our outward selfish nature or from a more humble inner nature. So let's think about approaching the Lord from a selfish perspective. Just to read the Lord's Word and to gain knowledge from it, just for the knowledge's sake, is not very helpful. It's not moving us forward in any way. It's more of us feeling like I'm meeting a criteria of knowing enough. Right? To know is not enough. Right? To know is not enough. The Lord wants us to know and to take it a step further. So if we're going to the Lord's Word just to absorb the knowledge, we're trying to meet an inner expectation within us, or perhaps an expectation from others around us of a certain level of knowledge, or feeling like I need to achieve a certain level of understanding. So we can read the Lord's Word just to gain the knowledge, or we can read the Lord's Word for looking to prove our own point. Again, right, a self-based approach to reading the Lord's Word. But the Lord desires for us a different approach. And that approach is reflected in how that leper came to him. I want to read, it says, a leper came and worshipped him. If we are going to approach the Lord, approach him in his word, it's in a worshipful state. A worshipful state. What is a worshipful state to be? It's to be humble. And he said to the Lord, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. So the leper knew he had leprosy. That's why he was coming to the Lord. He knew he had leprosy. When we go to the Lord's Word, we too should take with us the recognition that we are broken, that we need help, that we have this leprosy, that we don't have all the answers, we don't know the truth. That's part of the humility, is knowing the broken, the fallen, the weak state that we are in. That's an important part of the process. If we are knowing our own state, then we're asking the Lord to show us something new, something different. So that's part of how we approach the Lord. With humility and asking Him for His help because we know our own state. But it doesn't end there. Often the Lord says, hear these things and do them. Hear these things and do them. As we know, with anything in life, we can study something in a book, but trying to put it into practice is very different. You can read a book about riding a bicycle, but until you're actually on the bike and trying to ride it, that's where the real learning happens. The same is true with the Lord's Word. We can learn the truths out of the Lord's Word, but it's not until we take those truths and try and live them in our life, put them into practice, that we really learn. We really learn about ourselves. We really learn about what the Lord is challenging us with. So the real learning happens in that practicing part. And that's all part of the transfer, right? The Lord's message isn't just straight out the Bible, but the message that the information we gain as we're practicing it in our life. And as we're practicing it, as we're trying to live according to the Lord's Word, so that truth that we have learned from the Lord's Word is married to that love that the Lord has given within us. The Lord's truth with the Lord's love is married together in us. Right? That's the heavenly marriage that the Lord wants for each one of us. And when that happens, then we love that truth. We love to walk in the Lord's way. Our will is to do what the Lord's will is. Right? And that was part of our reading. Insofar as the will of one is in agreement with the other, they make one and is received. So when that, through practicing the Lord's word, the love is then clothed with the truth and there is a marriage within us, that is the Lord's doing. But with that also is the Lord's healing. Because we no longer want to do what we used to do. We no longer want to take that truth and use it in a certain way, but we're using it in a different way, in a new way, in a life-giving way. And so the Lord heals us. He touches our heart and our mind. And our leprosy is healed. But it's not all in one. We aren't just healed completely as to just one whole. It's little bit by little bit by little bit. Each truth that we learn from the Lord's word needs to be applied to life. Slowly but surely, the Lord grows this love inside of us, heals us slowly as we walk the path with Him. So what can we do? So the transfer part is where the biggest hassle or biggest mistakes happen. So my encouragement to you is to read the Lord's word, read as much or as little as you want, but search out one idea, just one idea. You don't have to know a lot. You just need one idea. Read until you have one idea from Him that makes sense, that you can see, this is a problem in my life, and this is a new way of thinking about it, and write it down. Write it on a couple of sticky notes. Stick it on your fridge. Stick it in your car. Stick it on your desk at work. Stick it on your computer, wherever you need to, as a reminder of one idea that the Lord has given you. And then take that idea, and whenever the opportunity arises, try and put it into action. Try in the moment to turn away from that hurtful way and instead embrace the new way. And so, through your reading, whether you read once a day, whether you read once a week, whether you read once a month, return to the Lord. Find that one idea, put it into practice. Go back to the Lord. Find that one idea, put it into practice. And that's all that the Lord asks of us. And as we do that, the Lord can grow that love within us, can turn our will towards His will, and slowly heal our lives. So we all suffer from many ways in which we use the Lord's truths for our own benefit. And so this healing is for all of us. But knowing that the Lord is waiting, He is pressing on us, He is reaching out our hand to us, and that healing is available for each of us. If we go to the Lord in a humble way, read from His word, and try and put that into action in our lives, He will heal us. Amen.